Howdy, howdy. Welcome everybody to episode 90 of Office Hours FM podcast. I'm your host, Carrie Dills, and this season we are talking about how to grow your business. And I'm very super excited to have Brad Touesnard from Delicious Brains on today to talk specifically about investing in your business and when's the right time to do that. So, hey Brad, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Pleasure to be here.
Why, thank you. I am very glad to have you. Apparently, the podcast I did with you and Pippin on applied filters went live today.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. People are getting a double dose of you.
Podcasting all over the place.
Yeah. So those people are pretty lucky, I guess I have to say, right? Double dose of Carrie.
I don't know about that. Do you check your mic connection and just jiggle it a little bit? You sounded like you're getting a little bit of static in there, which is funny because you sounded perfect before the pre-show. But welcome to all of those of you who are joining us live. I always love interacting with live listeners. You have the opportunity to ask your questions. You can do that via a Google Q&A app if you're watching this over on Google+, or you can ask questions via Twitter by tagging your question with hashtag OfficeFM. So without further ado, let's get into it. So Brad, I met you for the first time at Pressnomics last year. I remember sharing a very early morning flight or van to the airport with you.
All right.
And I want to apologize now if I was grumpy or said anything rude. It was very early and I had little sleep and no coffee. So.
Yeah, I will extend that same courtesy to you because I don't, I probably drank too much the night before. So yeah. these things happen at conferences, right?
Oh, well, for those who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, can you give us a little introduction and tell us about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I run a company called Delicious Brains, Inc. We do a couple of WordPress plugins. One is called WP MigrateDB Pro. That's a very long mouthful of things to say. And we do as well a newer plugin. It's called WP Offload S3. And you can check those out at deliciousbrains.com. So that's basically what keeps me busy nowadays. Well, that and going to conferences and managing my team. We've got 5 full-time developers and hopefully a 6th real soon. So yeah, we can dig deeper, but let's start with that.
All right. Well, first inquiring minds want to know, where did the name Delicious Brains come from?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. So there's like an episode of The Simpsons where Lisa plays a trick on Homer and Bart and convinces them that they're lepers, that they have leprosy. And they go next door to Flanders' house and they start pawing at the door, and Delicious Brains is kind of one of the things that they say. And I thought that whole moment was hilarious. And so this is kind of an obscure reference to that. And then, it's got zombie connotations, so it's kind of cool. And yeah, so I don't know. I just thought it was a good name, and I snatched up the .com. So, yeah. So
you either had to start a company and name it Delicious Brains, or go start a band, because clearly the name can be listed.
Yeah, or like a TV show or a movie or something.
Okay, yeah. As a total side bet, I was watching the old X-Files sort of in prep for this new season. And I was watching the episode that had the Eves on it, and they were numbered Eves. So like Eve 1, Eve 2. And in the episode, they focused in on Eve 6.
Okay.
And I wondered if that's maybe where the band Eve 6 got their name from. Is it an obscure reference to the X-Files? I have no idea. Just tossing that out there is a bit of...
Well, maybe someone will know. Maybe someone will tweet us back and we'll be like, yes, that is where it came from.
We'll need confirmation on that. Otherwise, a lot of people are going to have a sleepless night wondering about that one. Okay, so you mentioned that you're growing your team. You're about to hire someone else. And just to put this in a little bit of context, my listeners and me myself can identify with you're getting your business off the ground. Maybe you're working for yourself, or maybe you're even working for a company, but you're in a position that you're the one driving growth. And you don't have a lot of, I mean, your shoestring budget, right? Mm-hmm. Every purchase you're coming up, okay, do I have money in the bank? Is this a wise purchase? Is this da 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 da? And it's really hard to know when it's good to spend the money and take the risk on growing your business, and when it is something that could possibly wait. And a great example of this that I hear people asking me frequently is it worth it to, do a lynda.com membership per se? Is it worth that money to learn X, Y, Z? And, in that case, I think the answer is yes. Not that it doesn't have to be a Lynda subscription. It could be any sort of educational thing. But I'm like, if you could take a class for $100 and then immediately take that knowledge and go, net a project that's 2x what you usually charge, then it's worth it. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's talk about the roots of Delicious Brains. And if you're just going to share from your own journey, like what I'm describing, how you dealt with those pains.
Yeah, so I've got a bit of a spoiler. So I kind of cheated when we launched Delicious Brains in terms of risk. There was very little risk for me because I had sold another business. And so I had money coming in. I sold the business and we had an 18-month earnout, which just means that every month you get a certain amount of money, right? So I had a pretty good chunk of change coming in every month. So I wasn't really worried, for 18 months. So I had quite a runway to make it work. So I kind of cheated, but at the same time, I had to start the business that I sold, right? So if we go all the way back to starting that business, which was a web hosting company, I was in college. So, we all know how much money students usually have. I was no different. And I put, I think it was $5,000, it was in 2002, on a line of credit to buy servers for this new web hosting company that I started with a roommate, which looking back is like a tremendous, it seems like a ton of risk, and we were just foolish college kids, just throwing caution to the wind, right? And I feel like as I get older, I become more and more reserved, or risk averse, right? And looking back, I think we could have done it. We could have minimized our risk significantly. Instead of buying the servers outright from Dell, we could have leased them from Dell. Dell does server leasing. So it would have been like a couple $100 a month rather than a big chunk of change, $5,000. So, I think there's definitely ways to minimize risk that maybe people, don't necessarily see right away. To your point on education, though, I think that's a great investment. If you're learning something that becomes a tool in your tool belt to take you further in the future, you have to invest in tools, whether they're intellectual tools or software tools or whatever. You can only get so far with what you got, right? So. Yeah,
I like that. Look for creative ways to minimize your risk. Like at the time that you purchased those servers, did you know that you could have rented them from Dell? Was there a conscious decision to purchase versus rent?
No, I don't think so. I don't remember knowing that. My business partner might have known and just didn't tell me. Maybe I know we were pretty set on owning. So, it feels good. It's kind of like renting versus owning a house, you want to own it, but I rent right now a house. I used to own a house and I love renting. So again, that comes down to kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like risk because we're completely mobile now. If my wife and I decide we want to go away for 3 months or something, it's not like we have to sell our house. We just have to stop renting, right? So it's, yeah. Anyways, I'm off track.
It's all good. It happens on the show, and I'm usually the one to take us off track. So it's nice to see a guest do it for a change.
All right, I'll keep it up then.
Okay, so so you were able to start Delicious Brands with some padding, which is excellent, but that doesn't mean you had to be any less smart. I mean, you can blow 18K in a
true.
month.
Yeah.
So you kind of walk through what was your growth there, especially in terms of bringing on people.
Yeah, I think so. I hired someone like when I started out because I had that money coming in, and I was also doing some freelance work still on the side. So I was basically kind of managing this employee, and he was building the product, but I was reviewing all his code and really pushing him along. And I think. And so there was some risk there, right? Like whenever you hire someone, it's kind of risky to do it because you don't know. Yeah, I mean, upfront, I was very upfront with them when I hired him. I said, I don't know where this is going, if it's going anywhere. Like, in 6 months, if this thing is not working out, we might have to fold up shop. So yeah, I was just very upfront about the risk with him because there's nothing worse, someone taking a job and then you have to let them go and they have no idea it's coming, or they had no inkling that it was even, going to happen.
So quick question, if I can interrupt you at this point, but were you already taking a salary for yourself, or were you bringing somebody on and paying them a salary and you're still just sort of whatever's left over?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It was whatever's left over. Plus, I was freelancing as well, right? So there was money coming in from that as well. So yeah, the money I had coming in from the web hosting company was like just enough to. There was very little left over after paying for salary, right? So yeah, the money I'd come in from freelancing was kind of my pay, I guess. And also you have to realize that, this money coming in from my other business isn't, I don't want to just throw it away, right? Like I want to reinvest it in this new thing and start something new, but I really want it to succeed. I don't want to end up with no money after having run this web hosting company for 10 years and having put tons and tons of effort and hours into it. So so I guess, and I feel like I'm just getting that money back now. It's like, cause it's a long process, right? To get, to kind of reclaim those funds.
It is definitely a long play.
Yeah. But anyway, I think we developed my memory is fuzzy, but I think it was 6 months, but it could have been 4. So 4 to 6 months of development. And then we launched, and MigrateDB Pro just was a hit. Like it was just, we did 13K in the first month. So it was like, I was like blown away. I was like, I couldn't believe it. And I didn't really know what to do at that point. I thought it was going to be a slow ramp, and looking back, I really should have hired more people right away. Just, built more products and stuff. It took like 2 years before, 2 years. No, sorry, 1 year before I kind of got my act together and started hiring, more people to help out and to grow the business. So,
right along lines with what you were just saying, Jackie had a question. She said, what were the drivers behind MigrateDB Pro? Like, was that a lot of a pain point you had heard in the developer community and you built a product to respond?
Yeah, that's the origin story. So I was working at an agency in Vancouver in 2008. And we were working with every CMS under the sun, just everything. The director of technology there was like one of these people that just loves to experiment. So we'd be like, let's use this one this time. He was just, he was great though. He was a really great manager. But anyway, so I got to use a lot of different CMSs. But we kind of settled on WordPress at some point. And so I started to do, several sites in WordPress, and I was just getting so tired of setting up staging sites and having to manually do all the, data munging to get it to work on the staging site, right? Like, so updating the URLs and everything. So I built this. There was a plugin in the repo for backing up your WordPress database, and all it did is just dump out an SQL file. And so I just took that and I just modified it to do the finding and replacing of the data as it dumped it out. And that was MigrateDB. That was the free version of it that sat on the repo for the next 5 years.
Wow.
And I didn't promote it. I mean, who would I promote it to? I didn't have an email list or anything at that time. So it just sat on there and kind of just gained momentum through organic searches, people just finding it. And then, in 2013, I put a survey in the sidebar of the free plugin, just asking people, do you want to, would you pay for these extra features? It was like, the headline was like pro version ? And then there was like, would you pay for these features? And it was just like a bullet list of like being able to push pull data, and a few other features. I can't remember what I had in there. And then it was just yes or no, and then submit button. But if you chose yes, it then folded down, and it gave you like other questions like how much would you be willing to pay and stuff. So then I could gauge. I got like 300 responses from that little form. Of people saying, well, there was very few no's. If you were going to fill out the form, you probably were going to answer yes. There were a fair number of no's, but it was mostly yeses. And I got an idea of what people would be willing to pay. And then I just threw that all out the window and just charged people something else. But
were all the willing to pays end up being less than what you thought it was worth?
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't say I threw that out the window necessarily. I mean, when we launched, I think our developer license was unlimited, and it was $99 or something, which is kind of in line with what people had said. People had said everything from $2 up to $200, right? So I kind of just split the difference, I guess. But I also looked at Gravity Forms to as like a comparison of like what we were providing for value and what they were providing for value. And so like, we're not providing like even, I guess we're providing about half the value as Gravity Forms. So let's go with that. So that's kind of how how I priced it. Actually, I was probably like, it's probably a quarter the value, but I'm charging half the value anyways. So, because Gravity Forms is $199 for their developer license, and so I charged $99 for our developer license when we started out. But I quickly realized that what our value proposition was actually more valuable to people than I had originally thought. So I changed the pricing after, well, it was in December, so April to December. How many months is that? 8 months, something like that.
Did you grandfather folks in that were already signed up?
Nope. No, people didn't like that very much. I think if I was to do that in the future, there would be grandfathering, because I wouldn't like it myself. And I didn't really think about it too much when I did it. It was more like, well, it's going to be a huge pain to do this with our e-commerce system, to grandfather people in. So it's like, or I could just update the prices of the products that we currently have, which is like 5 minutes. So then I chose the latter. and it upset people. But ultimately people still were okay with it. I think the thing people had the biggest problem with was that we took away unlimited. So we gave people unlimited, and people that bought the unlimited license, like unlimited installs I'm talking about here, not lifetime, not a lifetime license or anything. There was always the expectation that they would have to renew after a year. But they bought into the unlimited installs, and then we took that option away when they renewed. When they renewed, they didn't get unlimited installs anymore. It was limited to 100 installs. So people didn't like that. And I totally understand why now, and I definitely would grandfather people. I will grandfather people for next products if we change pricing drastically. And when it's $1, You know, if I'm price testing $1, like a 99 versus 100 or something, I'm not grandfathering for that. But
live and learn.
Yeah.
So if you're listening live to the show and you have, I feel like I'm about to go talk show host right now, but
awesome.
if anybody has a particular risk that you're considering taking in your business, shoot it to us via Twitter, #OfficeFM, and we'll just sit here and opine over your life. By the way, Joe Casabona confirms that Eve 6 is an obscure X-Files reference. So says
There you go.
There you go.
Nice.
So what we're talking about, MigrateDB Pro, that's a great example of it's fairly expensive as plugins go, but it's a massive time saver. Like if you look at, if you bill by the hour or whatever you factor in to your project bids for the cost of a site migration, MigrateDB Pro makes life easier, saves you time, which therefore saves you money. So that would be an example of a risk that is well, or at least for personally, that's been a really good investment.
Yeah, I think, I guess people don't. I mean, we get people that say, the cost is in the early days. It was like we got people complaining about the pricing all the time. It was like we don't get that too much anymore. The odd comment. I think because now we have so much social proof, so many people, like on our site, there's so many tweets saying totally worth the money, blah, blah, blah. I think that really helps. Also, I've got a paragraph that says, if you're charging $50 an hour for your freelancing, this thing pays for itself after 4 hours of work, right? So if all it has to do is save you 4 hours in a year, like that kind of logic really works well on developers, because the developers are very logical creatures. So, so they like when because they probably weren't thinking of that, right? They're thinking, oh, well, this other plugin over here costs $199. I feel like that one's, I get way more value out of that one than I will out of yours, right? That's the way they're looking at it. But then if you break it down into like how much, time it saves you and how much time your time is worth, then they're like, okay, well, yeah, that does make sense. That does add up. So, yeah, I do want to point out about reducing risk as the theme of this show. When I was talking about the survey in the sidebar, like that is a way to see, that was a way to test to see if people were willing to pay for this thing and if there was a demand for it. And that's a really good way of minimizing risk, right? To go talk to your customers, right? I mean, that's pretty specific to products, right? But yeah, I mean, I guess freelance, like moving from a full-time job to a freelancing thing, I guess that's a different conversation. But yeah, I think when you're moving from moving into doing products, I think evaluating whether there's people out there that are willing to pay for what you want to build is definitely something you should do before you build it. I feel like in the developer community, it's just like people love building things. So they'll just go ahead and they'll build stuff and then just hope people show up. I mean, that's the way I was for years, until I decided to actually get serious and start looking, at what people actually want first, before actually building it. So
what was the impetus to you kind of turning that switch of being more purposeful?
Yeah, I don't know what the trigger was, to be honest.
Did you get married right around that time, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, that was kind of the. So when my wife became pregnant for the first time, that kind of a bunch of other thoughts started coming into my head, specifically around freelancing, because you're trading hours for dollars, right? If you can't work, those dollars aren't coming in anymore. So I just got a little nervous about that whole situation. Whereas like products, if you set up a company, a business, a product business specifically with employees that can run the business, like the business you should be able to run the business itself. Like the business should be able to run without you, I guess what I'm trying to say. And
that's really hard to achieve.
I think right now this, like, Delicious Brains could probably run for a few months without me. It would probably run for quite a while without me, quite a while beyond that. It might not grow because that's kind of my primary role. And there's a few other things that the guys would have to figure out how to do. But I think by and large, the business could run on its own right now with the guys that are they're doing all the day-to-day work. So yeah, I think that was kind of the triggers when my son was coming along, and so that I actually went out and started to do WP App Store. I don't know if you remember that. That was WP App Store.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I did that for a year actually, and then pivoted to this other business. But yeah, the idea was to get away from freelancing and to build a business, like a self-sustaining business, I guess. Yeah.
So you've got 5 people at this point. You're looking at bringing on a 6th. And what's that determinant for, like, you reach X point, either financially or workload wise, and that says we need more help?
Yeah. It's funny because, like, I was talking to the guys about this the other day, like, about should we bring someone else on trial, like a potential 7th person. And I was like, I don't know. But I think the answer is yes, we should, because we have all these other things on the shelf, right? These other products that I'm confident will bring in more revenue, right? So, even though we don't have the cash flow right now to support that 7th person, we have to take that little risk. The little risk is that product may not make any money, right? That I'm saying is going to bring in more revenue, right? But if I'm confident it will, right, it's still probably worth the risk to bring that 7th person on. And even if it doesn't, we can find another way. We can find another product to build that will bring in the revenue, or we can increase our revenue that's coming in from other products to support that 7th person. There's a bunch of different ways we can support that 7th person. And so, yeah, like I said, I think I'm becoming more and more risk averse, and I have to keep pushing myself to that edge, as things go. I don't know if it's age or just comfort. I think that's probably part of it. Like, the longer you're in a business, it's probably, the more comfortable you get in it, and, you start to get complacent, maybe even. That's probably my biggest fear in business. It's just becoming complacent and just, comfortable, and then just not pushing forward. So,
well,
I feel like a lot of companies die that way, right?
Well, here's a way for Delicious Brains to not die. And the question comes from Jackie, but pretty much, when is MigrateDB Pro, or will it ever be a product that can sync a complete WordPress install, not just the database and media files?
Yeah, good question. Well, she'll be happy to know this is an exclusive announcement, I think. I don't think we've announced this publicly, but we're going to build a themes and plugins add-on for MigrateDB Pro, which will allow you to push your themes and plugins from your dev to your staging to your production. So, we've processed a lot of refunds from people that thought that it had that feature. And we've been stubborn too, because the product's called MigrateDB. We've just been like, well, we're never going to do that because it's MigrateDB. It's not migrate. It's specifically for the database. But we've come around. we now feel like it just, people want it, so let's give it to them. Why not? It's not even that different than media files, right? We're just transferring files. It's very similar. Yeah.
I think that I just off in the distance heard a choir of angels singing the Hallelujah chorus.
Nice. Yeah, it's definitely it's probably the number 1 request we get for Migrate. So So yeah, that'll be big. I mean, we've been pointing people to things like Dandelion. I don't know if you've ever used that. It's like a Ruby. So Dandelion requires Git though. That's the only thing. And a lot of people are still not there yet with Git, right? So if you're not there with Git, like what are your options? FTP, right? Like, and that sucks, right? So, I mean, we do push people towards certain apps for FTP. Transmission is the one I used when I was freelancing. Or is it Transmission? No, it's Transmit.
Transmit.
Yeah, anyway, the one by Panic software. Yeah, that one does syncing. Like it'll determine what's different between two directories and just sync the files that you've updated. So it's it's not super fast or anything, but it works okay. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Glad to hear it on the show. I know my listeners, a lot of them use MigrateDB Pro, so they'll be thrilled. By the way, I'm going to send you a sponsorship invoice later since we're talking so much about it.
Sure.
Wow, you said sure far too easily.
Sure, no problem. Oh, I think we're breaking up.
Oh, can you hear me now?
No, I'm just kidding. I was kidding because of the sponsorship.
Oh, yeah, I'm bad at jokes. Okay. So we're getting off topic, but while we've got you on the horn, people, inquiring minds want to know your opinion on various things. So Jackie asks, would you like to see a repo for premium plugins or sort of a centralized place to rank and rate them?
Yeah, good question. I mean, this is going to sound funny coming from the guy who was trying to build a WordPress marketplace. Yeah, so WP App Store was supposed to be a marketplace for WordPress built into the WordPress dashboard that would have, star ratings and stuff and reviews for WordPress, premium WordPress products. That was one of the big features that it was going to have. The problem with I'm now that I'm running a plugin business, I'm not on board with the idea of someone running a marketplace that becomes dominant. You know what I mean? Like where we as plugin authors
are you there?
And plugin.
I'm not sure if I lost you or if you lost me, or we could be talking over each other. Somebody shoot me a little tweet.
Or you can't hear me right now?
Whoa. Well, this is just awkward silence, or maybe it's not awkward silence, and I'm just missing out on the actual podcast.
Maybe she. Oh, yeah. So you can't
got some good questions rolling in. Thanks to those of you.
Oh. So Carrie just froze up. Or maybe I did. I don't know.
Well, apparently I can't hop off because that ends the broadcast.
Can you hear me now?
You are. Now I can hear you.
Wow, we just had a major hiccup, didn't we?
That was, and really, it's not an episode of Office Hours FM unless there is technical difficulty, but that one was an extra weird round of technical difficulty.
Right.
Wow, I don't even know where we left off on that. You're going to have to back up.
When did you stop hearing me?
Now that you have a plugin company, ...
Oh, okay. So yeah, now that I have a plugin company, I'm just I don't like the idea of someone owning like the dominant marketplace, and us as plugin authors and sellers of plugins have to be, follow their rules, right? They set the rules. It becomes less of an open marketplace and more of a closed marketplace where they set the pricing. So a good example of this is the Apple App Store and the iOS App Store. And I don't know, like the stories I hear coming out of there where like developers submit their app and it gets rejected, or it goes on there and starts selling well and then it gets rejected. Those are things I don't want. I don't want those kinds of things. Right now, all the WordPress plugin businesses compete on Google. You know, you buy AdWords. It's much more open, and there's no one telling us, you know, what to do, what not to do, and stuff. I mean, there would be benefits to that, I guess. You know, if every plugin was reviewed and like scrutinized before it got into this, you know, dominant marketplace, maybe that would be a good thing for people. But I don't know. I don't know if it would, to be honest. So I guess that's my opinion on that whole thing. And with review, like if there was a site that just did reviews and star ratings for premium plugins, I think, you know, there's been a few out there that have tried that. I think if there was a dominant one, like an Amazon, you know how you go to Amazon to see the ratings on products to see if it's worth buying. Like, it would be nice if there was a place like that for WordPress products, right? But Amazon is kind of a dominant marketplace too, right? And the people that sell on there, you kind of have to be in Amazon if you want to sell, you know, a lot of volume. So yeah, it's like a catch-22, I guess, isn't it?
As an aside, if anyone ever wants some extremely good entertainment, just go read the comments on the reviews in Amazon. You can come across some jewels there.
Oh yeah, I'm sure someone set up a site that just posts the jewels. You know what I mean? I'm sure someone's done that.
I bet Joe Casabano is going to get on that and send me a link for the show's out.
Is he your Googler? Let me Google that for you.
Yeah, I didn't mean for him to be, but he has got the job. He's hired.
Good work, Joe.
Are you familiar with VersionPress?
I am familiar. And although I will say I have never used it, I've never actually installed it and tried it.
No?
But yeah, I looked at their documentation, looked into it. And I talked with the founder I think there's several founders, so co-founder, at WordCamp US in Philadelphia. So yeah, he was there.
Oh,
from
cool.
all the way from somewhere in Eastern Europe. I don't want to say which country because I'm probably wrong.
Well, Ken was asking what about VersionPress and MigrateDB playing together?
VersionPress, yes. So we are actually working on a competing, it's not really a competitor product, I guess. So we're working on the problem of solving the merging of databases. So if you go to datahawk.io, that's our site that's collecting email addresses from people that are interested in solving that problem. That's where we point people to now, because we get that a lot with MigrateDB, that problem, but it doesn't merge data. Merging data is extremely difficult, as we've found out over the last 7 months. So yeah, we worked on a prototype for about 6 months, and we got to a point where we're like, okay, I think we could do this now. I think this will work. And now we're pressing forward with the MVP. So that's coming, you know, this year, hopefully, unless we run into something completely crazy that we haven't foreseen. But it's looking good to get that out this year. And so
Datahawk.io, that is awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Datahawk. It's watching your data. Is the kind of the ominous thing.
I was thinking actually more about what it does than the name is awesome. But yeah, Datahawk, it's pretty tough.
Yeah,
kind of
it's
talons into your data.
Yeah. So the idea is that you install a plugin locally on your local install, and then as you make changes to your database, it records those, sends them up to our cloud app, and we keep track of all those. And we also monitor the live site or the staging site, whatever you have set up, for changes that conflict with those. And then it alerts you about those conflicts so that you can resolve them as you go, rather than, I've got this database that's completely different than this database. Let's merge them together, and all hell breaks loose. Solving like a huge, like a big batch of conflicts is really exhausting. And doing it this way also has the benefit of you're able to test your deployments before you actually deploy the live site. So you could replace your local database with the live site, and then run the changes that you've made on your local install to see and then keep developing, or do some testing or whatever. And then you can spot those, and any issues, any inconsistencies with the data, you can spot while you're developing or while you're testing before you actually deploy live. Because the people that I've talked to, most of them do what I used to do when I was freelancing. They have a notepad next to their laptop, and they're writing down all the things in the dashboard they need to do when they deploy.
That is brutal, but I may have done that in the past.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people edit the live site too. That's the other thing they do. So they'll if they need to add a new page at deployment, so they'll create that new page and save it as a draft. And then on deploy, they'll publish it. But they actually still have to go in there and do that. So we're trying to solve that problem and stop developers from doing that. That's because that's not an ideal situation, right?
No, not at all. We have a great question from Dave, actually going back to our topic of risks and the risks of working with other people. So when you're going from that team of one to a team of two, what would your best recommendations be there?
Right. So when's it time, or again, I guess when's the right time to hire the second employee, I guess. Yeah, I think what I described earlier, you have to look at where you're going and how much revenue that's going to bring in, and how confident you are of that happening before you take that risk, right? And minimize that risk. Like I said earlier, you should not just assume that the product that you're going to build is going to bring in revenue. You should talk to customers, even get their money up front if you could, basically pre-sell it is another thing people do. So for example, a Datahawk, we could have a pre-order button on there where you could send us your first, 3 months of payment or something, I've seen people do that. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Because then you're not only getting people's word, because people, they like to not upset you when you ask them, would you buy this? Then they really want to say yes, because they don't want to crush your hopes and dreams. Most people probably do that, right? And so, getting their money is really, that's the tell, right? Because they will say, when they say yes, then you say, well, would you prepay 3 months up front? And then they're like, maybe. And
it's a much truer gauge of commitment, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, so there's a couple of podcasts I recommend for people that are interested in this kind of stuff, business stuff. So Startups for the Rest of Us is a really great one. It's two guys that are running startups, SaaS startups. But they actually do recommend WordPress products as a good starting point, because SaaS apps tend to be very difficult to start, and they have a long runway to profitability. So they recommend WordPress products because you can kind of get the cash flowing sooner and kind of use it as a kind of jumping off point for your SaaS product that you plan to launch in the future. So Startups for the Rest of Us. I also listen to Tropical MBA. Have you ever listened to that one?
I have. I'm not a regular subscriber, but I troll through episodes to cherry pick the ones I want.
That podcasts I love, because I basically live live vicariously through those guys, like, because they travel the world, right, and running their business. So they're talking about traveling the world and running their business, like my two big things that I love to do. And so, yeah, and they're very, very smart about business, and their podcast, some of their episodes are excellent advice. I can't even count the number of times that I've like listened to one of their podcasts, and then I just like rush to write down a bunch of notes that, I had to implement. I'll give you an example. There was a episode recently about meetings, and I was so anti-meeting that our company wasn't meeting at all up until like a few months ago. Like a face-to-face meeting like this. Like, we just didn't do that because I was like, why would we do that? Since it's a waste of time. Then we implemented like a monthly meeting just so we can get some FaceTime. And those were running like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And that podcast was saying, if your meeting is running, an hour and a half, 2 hours, that's like way too, that means you don't have enough meetings. That's what that means. So that's what we've implemented, like weekly meetings. So every week each, and they're one-on-one meetings. So the two developers that work on product A will meet, and they'll take some notes, and then I'll just review those notes at some point during the week. So that's very new. That started, I think, 2 weeks ago. Yeah, but anyways, I'm off track again. What was the question?
You're good. No, we got some great podcast recommendations there. Dave was talking about the best recommendation for going for a team of 1 to 2. I would throw in there, because you sort of addressed the business aspect of it, right? Can you pay this person? Is there going to be enough work coming in? Mm-hmm. I think the other aspect there is the relational one of how do you interact? Because this person could end up being a total.
Oh, you mean how do you like break them onto the team? Like, how do you vet them? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, both vet them, and what if you get somebody that they're not a good communicator, or they're just a pain in that rear to work with, or even setting roles and expectations, right? So say it's a team of 2, who has the final say? Like, and in your case, if you're hiring them, you're the boss, I suppose. Yeah. But if people are, right. If a freelancer brings on another freelancer, then there's still got to be some sort of decision hierarchy involved. But I don't know. Tell me, if you get a dud, what happens? Or maybe you haven't had a dud.
Well, so I think the hiring process is broken, the like traditional one. So the traditional one is, you get called into an interview. So you go to the office and you meet with people that are behind a desk, and they got your resume there, and they're making notes, and you're communicating with body language and everything else. And then they just decide based on that whether or not you're in or not. Sometimes they'll give you like a test, like some kind of project or something. But more often than not, the way I've hired in the past and been hired, there was no test. There was just, your resume and a meet and greet. And that's so, now that I'm an employer and hiring people, it's so weird, that process, because it's just like, I'm going with my gut, So what we do now, we just bring them on board as on a trial. So they come on board and they work with us. They work with the team. They communicate with the team or not. Like, if they don't, then they're gone. But they're fully embedded with our team and working on our actual GitHub issues that are going to end up in the product, and part of our code review process, all that stuff. So then either it works or it doesn't. And I'm very upfront about the fact that it doesn't work most of the time. I think our success rate is like 1 in 5 or something, right? So we go through a lot of people before we actually end up hiring someone full time. I felt bad about that for a while because I thought like we were doing something wrong. But I've talked to a few other people. Ryan over at WP Site Care, actually talked to him, and he says he's got about the same success rate as we do. So I think that's probably fairly normal. We modeled our hiring process after Automatic too. This is not like our invention or anything. They do the same thing. They bring somebody on board. I think theirs is a little fancier because they have like a bunch of scripts that turn things on and off like really easily. I wish we had that because it's a pain. I've got to go through all these different things, like go through Slack, turn that off, and then, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, that's kind of our process, our hiring process.
Yeah, so some good tips there. Set like a trial period on it, an end date, and then also, wow, that second one just fell out of my brain. So I'm going to say there's one great takeaway, and then I'm going to go listen to it again, and in the show notes we'll put that second great takeaway.
Yeah, the second great thing, I don't know what it is either. I think just putting someone on trial and just really vetting whether or not they're fit with your team, right? And go through your priority list. Like if communication is top priority, which it is for us, like definitely make sure they hit that, right? If they're not communicating, it's not going to work, right? With a remote team like we are, like communication is so important, right? I'll give you another example. I'll give you an example of one that didn't work out. It was almost like communicating too much, right? Someone was, it's happened a couple times actually. The person was like too verbose. Like they weren't filtering their thoughts. They're just putting a ton of stuff on paper, well, on GitHub. and then, you know, members of our team that had to look at it were like basically sighing before they had to look at it because they knew that it was going to be this like big, long process of trying to decipher what's actually, you know, what the meat of this message is. And so that's like a huge red flag, right? So that's an example of like one thing that will like, you know, that's a huge strike against for us. Yeah.
Oh, thanks for your thoughts there. We've got Jackie. I know you've got a burning question, and I'm going to get to it before the show ends. But while we're on the subject of investing in business, Costas has a question, really a fantastic question. Have you ever thought about or considered investing in either business coaching or something like a mastermind group?
So, what I was going to bring something up first. Another tip about hiring, and this one comes from Pippin. so Pippin's really hired just people that have contributed to Easy Digital Downloads. As you know, Easy Digital Downloads. I can't say that anymore. EDD EDD is open source, so he gets contributions, and so he hires from that pool of people that contribute to his project. Where it didn't really work for us because our product's like more of a tool that people use. We don't get a lot of contributions. And so, but for him, it worked really well because then he can see, like, it's so obvious that person will fit because he already communicates well. He already know his code, you know. So it's just kind of a shortcut to hiring. So that's another way to go.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, but so what was the question again? Sorry.
So investing in either business coaching or masterminds.
So I'm a big fan of mastermind groups. First of all, I want to define what a mastermind group is. Some people think it's like 12 people or like 20 people or something. It is not. It is typically 3 to 4 people, or actually 2 to 4 people. The bigger it gets, the less time each person has to talk when you meet. So it's much more difficult to run the bigger the group is, okay? So I'm in a mastermind right now. I was in a mastermind with 4 people. It was 3, grew to 4, and now we just don't do it anymore. I think that's partly because it was too big, partly because people got busy and it just fell apart. But I am in a regular mastermind right now with 1 other person, and it's great. It's an excellent call every 3 weeks-ish. The other mastermind I was in was meeting every 2 weeks, I think it was. I mean, you can meet as often as you want. It's up to you. But yeah, the value you get out of sharing your problems, especially as a single founder. So if you have co-founders, they're like, your they're your sounding board. You can go to them with problems that you're facing, or you're in it together. If you're alone in your venture, you have the wall to sound off of. That's about it, right? Like you have to have these calls with other entrepreneurs to bounce ideas off them, ask their feedback on things, get advice on stuff you're struggling with. So all those things, huge fan. Business coach is interesting. I was just so I run a little snowboarding ski conference every year. This is our third year. It's called Big Snow Tiny Conf. And this year it was 12 people, and we all got together in Vermont and talked business on the chairlift up the mountain and in the chalet and in the sauna. It was awesome, right? So that was really great. That was like a kind of a one-time mastermind, I guess you could call it. But yeah, just basically business constantly for like 3 days.
That's very similar in concept to like a Cabo press or a beach press, where it's a span of time, a small manageable group of people, and it's business focused, but you're getting to kind of vacation while you're at it. Exactly.
Yeah. Very, very similar. So anyway, I can't remember where I was going with this. Oh, someone suggested a business coach. They were adamant about how it's transformed their business, just having a coach. So it's something I might look into. I think the thing that I was worried about is like, he was talking about it and it was like somebody that physically sat in on meetings that they were having. I'm like, it doesn't sound like me. And so I need to find a remote business coach, someone that I can meet with like this on, do you want to be my coach, Gary?
Let's book a time.
Yeah. So I didn't even know that really existed as a profession until I think this was, last week. Business coach.
Yeah. I think I've never paid for business coaching, and I think I'm fortunate enough to operate in a peer group that has a lot of people that are smarter than me, and I've still got so much I can learn, just kind of where I am, and at some point, that it might be a worthy investment.
Yeah, I wouldn't use that argument though. Like, I think people, no matter what stage you're at, I think people can also still help you go, like, speed things up, right? Because you can if you even present your current situation and what you're thinking of for the future, like, people can help you stitch that together, right? Can help you kind of make that path forward. So I wouldn't say like, yeah, no matter what stage you're in, even if you're working a full-time job and you've got like something on the side that you're working on, like, I think you could still benefit greatly from a mastermind group. Or maybe even a business coach. I'm not sure. Business coach seems like something that you need money for, though.
Well, there are paid mastermind groups out there too. I guess it depends on what you're looking for and the value you're able to extract where you are, or for free, or if you need to go find that paid structure.
Yeah,
additional value.
I don't think you need to pay for a mastermind group. I mean, I think there's lots of people out there. I think the way to get to find a mastermind group is to go to conferences and talk to people. Go to like business conferences where your people will be, and then make those connections and find the people that don't have a mastermind group or want a new one or whatever.
Yeah, a couple of episodes ago, or a few episodes back, I had Topher DeRoja on, and we were speaking specifically about communication and meeting people at WordCamps, but also just conferences in general, and how valuable those relationships are. We are going to have to wrap up, but before we do, before we put the end cap on episode 90, first, I would like to invite anyone who's not already on the mailing list to head over to officehours.fm/subscribe, and you will get a loving email from me approximately one time a week with a reminder on the show. And every once in a while, I'm trying to include some extra helpful tidbits in those. And then the question. Are you ready?
The question, okay.
And it's a very controversial question that Jackie's asked.
Great.
What code editor do you use?
Oh, for God's sakes. That's almost as bad as spaces or tabs.
Tabs all the way.
Yeah, you just set off a lightning storm. Your comments are going to blow up now. Our team uses PHP Storm, and they're pretty religious about it. They love it a lot, and it does a lot. It keeps them out of trouble, I guess. Like it manages the little things really well, like indenting and alignment, like all the code formatting stuff that's really annoying that you don't want to have to, comment on when you're reviewing code. You don't want to have to say, alignment's out of whack here. And
there's spaces, not tabs.
Yeah. You don't want to have to do that in a code review. So, they love it for that reason, because it basically eliminates that. I'm still on Sublime Text. I haven't jumped over to PHP Storm, mainly because I don't do a lot of development anymore. I work on our site from time to time. And I think I'm getting rusty too, because I just submitted a pull request like yesterday and the guys like tore it apart. Like it's full of bugs and it was a stupid little thing too, like a stupid little change that I made, and I ruined everything. So
I'm imagining a Giphy where you throw the basketball up in the air and it just comes and gets slapped down. Yeah,
that's pretty much what it was. And actually, it was worse than that, because after we rolled it out, there was still a bug they found. So I think I've hit the point where I need to stay away from the code, because I'm more dangerous than I am helpful.
Well, thank you for your insights and for coming on the show. It is always a pleasure chatting with you. I'll be able to chat more with you actually in person at Pressnomics next month.
That's right.
In the meantime, thank you everybody who tuned in live, and those of you who are listening to this after the fact. I love you. I love my listeners.
Awesome.
And with that, we will wrap episode 90, and I'll see everybody next week. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.